So every January, millions of us do the same thing. We sit down, write out goals, get in shape, save more money, finally start that project, genuinely excited. And then by February, absolutely nothing. The gym membership gets unused, the budget spreadsheet gets abandoned, the project stays in the someday folder. And here's what's a bit strange about this, because people blame themselves. Not enough discipline, we don't have enough willpower, we're just not that kind of person who follows through. But that's not what's happening at all. There's a system, 5 steps that separates goals that stick from goals that just fade. And once you see this, you can't really unsee it. So that's what we're covering here today. The 5 things that actually make a difference to sticking to our goals. Let's start with what's actually going wrong. So in 2009, researchers at the Max Planck Institute did this experiment. They wanted to know, can humans walk in a straight line without any external cues? So they took people out into fields, deserts, forests, different terrains, different times of day. And the instruction was quite simple. Walk in a straight line and keep going. And here's what they found. If there was a sun or a moon visible, people could do it. They had something to aim at, a reference point. But the moment the sky clouded over, even though people were convinced they were walking straight, absolutely certain, they started veering off course. Small errors compounded, and over time, their paths would loop back and cross themselves. They walked in circles without even realizing it. And that's exactly what happens with our goals. Every year, same pattern, set the goal, start walking, and 3 months later, we look up and realize, we're right back where we started. Different goal, same place, year after year after year. The problem isn't discipline. The problem is there's no compass, no system. So here are the 5 things that actually work. Step 1, and this is the one most people skip, because when people think about goal setting, they think tactics, strategy. They want the spreadsheet, the app, the morning routine. They don't want to hear, check your beliefs. And that kind of sounds like therapy and mindset stuff. But here's why it matters. Before setting any goals, you have to check what you actually believe is possible, because that's part of the pattern. Every time someone fails at goal, they don't just fail. They collect evidence. They file it away. I always start strong and fade. I'm not disciplined. I'm not the kind of person who sticks to things. And after a few years of doing that, something will shift inside. Certain goals stop even feeling like options. Maybe not because they're impossible, because somewhere in the background, there's a voice saying there's no point. And that's what happens with goals. Hit enough walls and you stop approaching the boundary altogether. Someone who's failed at dieting 5 times doesn't just have a diet problem. They have a belief problem. They've decided, usually unconsciously, that they're not the kind of person who can lose weight. Now, same with money. Fail at budgeting 3 years in a row, and the belief becomes, I'm just not good with money. Same with fitness, same with relationships, same with any goal that's failed enough times. And once that belief locks in, no plan in the world is going to work, because the outcome has already been decided. The frustrating part, these beliefs feel like facts. They don't feel like choices. I'm not a morning person. It feels as true as I have brown hair. But one of those is biology. The other one is a story that got repeated enough times that it started to feel permanent. So step 1 is to catch the belief before it catches you. Watch for words like always and never and can't. If you hear yourself saying, I always fail at this, or I could never do that, just stop. That's not a fact. You have to understand that's a story, and that's a story we can edit. The invisible fence isn't real. It just feels very real. Step 2, close out the past. And most goal setting advice skips this entirely. It's all about looking forward, setting targets, getting excited about the future, which is great. But here's where it's a problem. If the past isn't processed properly, it gets dragged into the present. The failures, the frustrations, the half-finished attempts, they don't disappear. They sit in the background whispering that this time will be the same as last time. So before setting any new goals, you have to close the loop previous year. So ask those 3 important questions. 1, what actually worked? What got accomplished? What's worth being proud of? Because the brain has a negativity bias. It fixates on failures and forgets wins. Deliberately remembering, what work rebalances the picture. It helps you to understand what worked for you. Number 2, what didn't work? Where were the shortfalls? Not as self-punishment, but as data. What patterns keep repeating and what really got in the way? And number 3, what's the lesson? If you had to extract one insight from the year, what would it be? This takes maybe an hour, but the difference is massive. You're not carrying last year's baggage into this year. You've taken what's useful and left the rest behind. So that loop should be closed. Now you can actually move forward. Step 3, write the goals down, but do this properly. There's a study from Professor Gail Matthews at Dominican University in California. She took close to 300 people, entrepreneurs, executives, artists, lawyers, and split them into groups. Some wrote down their goals, and some didn't. The people who wrote down their goals were 42% more likely to achieve them. Can you imagine? Just from writing them down. So think about that. Not a new productivity system, not a coach, no accountability partner. Just the fact of putting pen to paper, fingers to keyboard, and writing down what they actually want. And yet most people don't do it. They carry goals around in their head. This vague idea about wanting something someday, never written down, never made concrete. But here's where most people go wrong. They write something very vague: get healthier, make more money, be more productive. That's really not a goal. That's just a wish. Goals that actually stick have specific ingredients. They are specific, not read more, for example, but read 2 books a month. Not exercise, but run 5K 3 times a week. They have to be measurable. There has to be a way to know when it's done. A number, a milestone, a finish line. And they have to be actionable. And this usually starts with a verb. So run, write, complete, launch, eliminate, not be better at. That's not an action. And they have to be time bound. A goal without a deadline is just a fantasy. There has to be a date attached. And here's the one most people get wrong. Goals need to be a little bit risky. Not reckless, but if a goal doesn't create a little bit of fear, it's probably too safe. Because you're not going to grow, you're not going to get excited if it doesn't hit the edge of your comfort. If it's inside your comfort zone, you're not going to move forward. 7 to 10 goals across the main areas: health, relationships, finances, work, personal development. Each one has to be checked against those ingredients. And here's something most people don't realize. There are actually 2 types of goals. Achievement goals are one-time things. Run a marathon, launch a business, pay off the credit card. You do it once and you're done. And then there's habit goals. And these are a bit different because these are things you want to do consistently. Exercise 3 times a week, read for 30 minutes a day, save 10% of every paycheck. The mistake people make is treating these 2 goals as the same. They're not. Achievement goals need a deadline. Habit goals need a streak. Achievement goals are about the finish line. Habit goals are about the rhythm. If you write, get fit, and don't know which type it is, you've already lost. So is it run a 10K by June or exercise 4 times a week for the next year? Different goals, different approach. Write them down. Know which type each one is. That alone puts you ahead of most people. Step 4, find the real why. This is what separates goals that last 3 weeks from goals that last 3 years. And here's the pattern. Goal gets set in January, for example, and the motivation is high, and by March the motivation has worn off. And if the only reason for the goal was because I should, or because everyone else is doing it, it's dead. Surface level reasons don't survive difficulty. They don't survive inconvenience. They definitely don't survive the 15th time you don't feel like doing the thing. So here's the test. If someone offered you £1 million to quit the goal, would you take it? If yes, the why isn't deep enough. So every goal needs a deeper why. Take get in shape. Why? To look better? Okay, but why does that matter? To feel confident? Why? Because I've spent years avoiding photos and it's affecting how I show up in my own life. Now we're somewhere real. That's not a vanity goal anymore. That's an identity goal. And identity goals are really hard to quit on. The technique is simple. Take any goal and ask, why does this matter? Then take that answer and ask again and again. Why? Keep going until you hit actually something that lands. Something that's not about what you think you should want, but what you genuinely want. And there's a second part to this. Tell someone. Not everyone, just one or two people who'll actually check in. Because the moment a goal is said out loud, it becomes real in a different way. There's skin in the game. Someone's going to ask, how's it going? And that can change the equation. A goal that's written down is good. A goal with a real why is better. And a goal that someone else knows about is best. Remember that walking study? People could only walk straight when they had something to aim at. The moment they lost the reference point, they started drifting. Same with goals. Write them in January, put them in a drawer, and by June you've forgotten what you were even working towards. The drift happens gradually and slowly. You don't notice it until you're right back where you started. So visibility of your goals is non-negotiable. And yet it's the step we all skip. We do the goal setting in January, maybe even do it properly, and then never look at it again. The list goes in a notebook, then goes in a drawer, and then gets forgotten until December when we think, oh yeah, we had a goal. That's not a system, that's just a lottery ticket. The fix is very simple, but it requires consistency. That means a weekly review every Sunday. Take 10 minutes, look at the full list, every single goal, and ask one question. What's one thing I can do this week that moves any of this forward? Not a massive action, not an overhaul of your life, just one thing, one step towards that goal. Because these goals don't get achieved in one leap. They get achieved through small, consistent moves over time. But those moves only happen if you remember where you're going. So that weekly review, one next step, that's the rhythm. But there's one more piece that makes this actually stick. Activation triggers. An activation trigger is an if-then statement. So when X happens, I'll do Y. Instead of I'll exercise more, you say, when I finish work, I change into gym clothes before I do anything else. Instead of I'll read more, you say, when I get into bed, I'll read 20 minutes before I touch my phone. Instead of I'll save money, you say, when my paycheck hits, 10% moves into savings before I even see it. So this trigger removes the decision. You're not relying on motivation or willpower in that moment. The situation itself prompts the action. And so most goals fail because they depend on remembering to do the thing. But triggers make it automatic. So for every goal, ask, what's the trigger? What's the specific situation that will prompt the action? And then, if you think about it, sometimes you miss a week, you drift. You miss a month, you're back to walking in circles. And here's the thing that most of us don't even realize. This isn't just about hitting goals. It's about who you become in the process. Someone who checks their beliefs, processes their past, writes proper goals, connects to real reasons, and reviews every week. That's a different person than someone who sets vague goals in January and hopes for the best. The system changes behavior. The behavior will change your identity. And once the identity shifts, the goals almost take care of themselves. So remember that voice at the start. I'm just not the kind of person who follows through. That's not fact. That's a belief that got installed by failed attempts without a system. You're not just trying to lose weight. You're becoming someone who takes their health seriously. You're not just trying to save money. You're becoming someone who's in control of their finances. That's the real payoff, not just the goal. The person you have to become to achieve it. So that's the system. Step 1, check your beliefs, find the invisible fences. Step 2, close out the past. Don't drag last year into this year. Step 3, write the goals properly. Specific, measurable, actionable, risky, and time-bound. Know if it's an achievement goal or a habit goal. Step 4, find the real why. Go deeper than I should. Ask the trail of whys. And step 5, keep it visible. Weekly review. One next step. Set triggers to make it automatic. And look, I suppose this doesn't make it easy. Resistance doesn't just disappear. There will be days when the goal feels pointless and the motivation is completely gone. But the difference is now there's something to come back to, a system instead of just hoping on willpower showing up. Most people who fail at goals don't have a discipline problem. They have a system problem. They're walking without a compass and wondering why they keep ending up in the same place. So pick one area, just one, run it through those 5 steps and give it 90 days. See what happens. Anyway, that's the 5 steps. Worth trying. If you've got goals sitting in the back of your head and haven't gone anywhere, see you in the next one.